So I spent my career as before Harvard as a forensic investigator of sick buildings. I've done this for over 10 years, investigated many hundreds of buildings that have had a problem. And it's through that work that even though the pandemic is really unfamiliar to all of us, a lot of it feels quite familiar to me and probably others like me who do this kind of work, where I've been in buildings where people have died, where everyone is at risk, where there's a very low information environment. And you have to make decisions based on the best available evidence. And there's a massive financial consequences to all of this too. And what we do here is you go back to the science, right? That's the place to start. So we think about our buildings, and you think, okay, how first are we exposed, or how is this virus transmitted? There are three modes of transmission that then inform the control strategies that you then line up. So we know close contact or large droplet is a mode of transmission. That informs physical distancing, wearing a mask. Two, we know contaminated surfaces can help spread this disease or this virus. So there, what do? We wash hands and we clean and disinfect surfaces. Last, there's evidence that airborne transmission is happening. That's nothing to be feared. It just means we then apply an additional layer of control strategies. And here is where buildings come into play: higher ventilation rates, greater filtration, and also mask wearing. So we can line up the science, understand the controls, and then it just gets specific from there, and that's okay. And then you can apply these basic principles to a manufacturing facility, an office building, a school, you name it. It works everywhere. Next slide, please. But I want to put let's say the building level controls in context of a larger framework to think about how to minimize or reduce risk indoors from the virus. One of the things I wrote about was in maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago in Harvard Business Review with my co-author, John Macomber from Harvard Business School, was this hierarchy of controls approach. I've been talking about this for a while. I work with many organizations on their return to office strategies and their what's next strategies. And many have found this framework very useful, because one of the most challenging things right now is there's so much information coming at us. The science is changing so fast, and it's hard to figure out what the home is for all of this. Elevators, mask wearing, PPE, how do we make sense of it? So here's this framework, and it has only 5 parts. I'll describe it quickly. The best part is it's not Joe's strategy. The hierarchy of controls is something we've used for decades in the field of worker health and safety. And I'll list them in the order of most effective to least effective. So first, you want to eliminate the hazard. By the way, this works for chemical exposures too, and radiological exposures. So eliminate the hazard. In the context of business, that means prioritizing work from home. But that's not a path to restarting the economy. So the next step is substitution of activities. And here you could think about, in the context of COVID, we think of this as identifying the core people that have to be back and physically present in your buildings. Third, you want to overlay engineering controls. These are healthy building strategies like higher ventilation, higher filtration, maybe supplementing that with portable air filtration. Fourth, administrative controls. Here you want to put in, maybe the better way to think about this is, or another way to think about it is de-densification strategies. So how do you manage the flow of people and choreographing the flow of people in your lobby, in your elevators, with your workforce, in an industrial manufacturing facility? And you can be very effective here with administrative controls, extending shifts, extending the workday, A/B shifts, creating pods of people. So if someone in one pod gets sick and infected, a group can self-quarantine without shutting down the entire production line or the entire business. Last in the hierarchy is PPE, for personal protective equipment. And in the case here, it's mask wearing, right? And I've been on record, I had an article in the Washington Post in early April saying the public health debate is over, you should be wearing a mask. There's lots of reasons or lots of ways this can provide a benefit. So anyway, that's one way to think about healthy buildings and better buildings in the context of a larger framework, a layered defense framework for risk reduction. It's very similar to probably how you handle physical security in your building, where no one strategy itself is sufficient to reduce risk. But if you layer enough on top of each other, you can get to a place where people can feel comfortable coming back into your facility. Next slide, please.